Hey everybody, this is Wade with Wade for Wireless. And I put together a scope of work training, which I thought would really help people out in wireless deployment. And the reason I did that is because one of the biggest feedback messages I get, one of the biggest messages I get from people working in the field is that they don't get paid. They don't get paid. And they don't go after the people that don't pay them for the pay. Now, this could be for several reasons. One, they might have not had anything in writing. Trust me, nobody likes more paperwork, but you need to have it in writing. You just do. That's going to be a key factor here. So to get things in writing, what's going to be your agreement? You may have a contract, and if it's maintenance or something like that, you may have a contract that way, but you need to get paid to stay in business. To be safe, you need to get paid. To continue doing business, you need to get paid. To pay your employees, to pay yourself, you need to get paid. So the best legally binding document you can have is a scope of work. Why? Because the scope of work defines all the work that you're going to do, that you have to do, and the work that you've done to get paid. Okay, so I put this together with hopes that you would understand the SAL, scope of work, and you would understand how to set the expectations. Whether you write the scope or whether the customer has written the scope for you, you need to be able to look at that scope and agree on something in writing that you both sign. So who needs to understand the SAL? Now listen, one of the things that you have is a career path here, and that's one of the things I try to promote, is that if you've done field work, chances are you're primed to understand what it takes to do the field work. So I didn't write this just for the wireless installers, just for the tower climbers, just for the tower technicians and tower hands who will be working wireless deployments. But understand, they need to understand the scope of work. I wrote it for the engineers, for the technicians, and I also wrote it for the project managers who are going to manage a site, because those are all the people that need to understand what needs to get done in order to get paid. Now, I'm not talking punch lists. That's part of the scope of work, and you need to understand that based on the method of process. I'll come out with that training later. But what you need to understand is what needs to be done. The other people I think this would benefit is logistics and supply chain, because they need to understand how to kit things and also how to be responsible for the parts so they can properly put everything together in a warehouse. I also think vendor managers issuing the RFP would be a big plus, because sometimes the carriers don't do it themselves. They go to a GC or a contractor. So who's going to handle you guys in the field is probably going to be, I hate to say it, but probably a turf vendor, a general contractor, or someone like that. That's another one who needs to really understand what is expected to get finished and completed to get paid. And finally, let's not forget the estimators. Deployment estimators need to know what is expected of the teams when they're bidding on a job. If they don't understand the scope of work, what the customer's written, and if they don't understand how to revise that scope so it fits with what's actually being done, payment's going to be an issue. You just hope you get paid. So it's very important you understand that. So as an overview of the scope of work, what I did, I basically put everything down that is going to be involved in it. And that's something I want you guys to understand, that you need to understand not only what should be in it, but what could be in it. You also need to understand, just because the customer wrote the scope of work, you can't revise it. Now, I know when your stuff comes out to bid, you have to follow the scope based on the bid. But if you have to revise the contract or the agreement based on reality versus fantasy, because a lot of contractors, they have this fantasy of something that's going to get done for minimum payment, and you have to set the expectation. So what do? You look at the topics I covered here. You look at the scope of the services and or the deliverables. Now, this is a high-level scope. They usually have it in the beginning, and it sets the premise for the scope of work. Next, you want to look at, next. You can look in any order you want, but I would prefer if you looked at the milestones, because if it's a big project, listen, if you're just going out to one tower, hanging antennas and a transmitter, you're done. Milestone is when you complete it, and it's probably up and running and tested, right? So that's a milestone. If you have to do 100 of these, you have to decide how you want to get paid. So that's in there. Service location. You really need to think about where you're going to be working, in-state, out-of-state, drive time, the type of job it is, rooftop, tower top, and things like that. the supplier responsibilities, because you as a supplier need to understand what your responsibilities are as far as safety, as far as work, as far as insurance, as far as what the customer is expecting of you. Finally, not finally, I have more things here. Assumptions and exclusions. You have to set the assumptions up ahead of time so everyone understands and is on the same page. For instance, there's a lot of details in there that you could pay for as a contractor, as a tower climber, or you as a customer may expect them, the contractor, to pay for things that maybe is not agreed upon. So I have that in there. What the actual deliverable is. Let's face it, most of you guys do service work. Am I right? If you buy a part, you pay for the part, you got the part, done. And if you're supplying parts, you put that in there. You expect that to get paid for. But when you're doing a service, you have to define what done is. You have to define what complete is. The customer, the contractor, doesn't matter who, both sides have to agree on what completed is. This is beyond milestones, but at the end of the contract, and what the deliverable is for each milestone. And finally, the customer responsibilities. And the reason I separated that out, we all know what the contractor's responsibilities are. It's do the work, whatever it is, hang the antennas, install the transmitter, run the lines, run power, all of that, connect backhaul, whatever it is. We know their responsibility. What's the customer responsible for? Are they going to come out and sign off on it? Are they going to do an inspection? Or are they just going to take the contractor's word for it? Hey, we trust you. I'm sure it'll work. And don't get me wrong, there are some that have a relationship like that, but it really needs to work before they just sign off on it. But you need to understand what that's going to be. Because if you complete the job and the customer says they aren't going to pay you till they inspect it, and then they wait 6 months to inspect it, it's a problem. You need to set the expectations up front. So finally, that's really it. Thank you. I appreciate your support. Again, wadeforwireless.com. And the training is at wadesarver.com/scope of work training. I have the links in there. I'll try to put them on this video, but I'd like to thank you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to watch a video. I appreciate you following my blog. I really do. Thank you for your support. And remember, don't be afraid to ask questions. Education is very important. You have to educate yourself. You can learn on the job. You can learn on your own. It's very important, and you make the industry better by learning your responsibilities. And don't forget, be smart, be safe, and pay attention.